I believe that black men should take control of their own narrative by eliminating the ladies out, because it's going to be too much arguing.
To reality.
Peace, blessings, and black love. This is Amandla Awethu coming to you, black at it again. In this video, I just wanted to talk about how I tried to emphasize and explain how men as a group are the primary cause of the problems that are infecting black America. Now, when I say these things, I'm going to say these things as many times as the listening audience needs to hear it. The problem that we're really having with black America, with black America, is the fact that we're two nations in one. Where you look at other countries, they're one nation in one. And if you look at the African continent, even though it has 54 countries, each country has already separated itself to where that individual country is governed and ruled by itself. So even though it's one landmass, they divided themselves up to be individual small countries. So if you are part of, let's say, Ghana is a country unto itself, then those are the rules. And then those people, if they don't like the Ghanaian rules, they can always leave the country and go to other parts of Africa and then do what the individual, want to do. If they do like the Ghanaian laws, then they'll stay right there in Ghana and then do what Ghana wants them to do. If you're from Senegalese, you don't like the rules that the Senegalese have, Senegal, if you don't like the rules that the Senegalese have, you can always leave Senegal and go somewhere else. Well, the United States is sort of kind of structured like that because, again, the United States was the blueprint. The only difference is all states are, for the most part, ran the same. Now, there are small little laws on the books that says this state operates like this, like that, like that, like this, but they all, for the most part, run the same. So if you have 50 states and their individual judicial laws are similar or the same, then that means wherever a member of your society goes, they can get the same similar treatment or better. Whereas when it's in Ghana or Senegal, those laws are different. Similar, they're not. They're vastly different. So what it makes the people, and each country is for the most part ran by men. So when they leave, they're not necessarily jumping out of the frying pan and into the fire. They're really, in that paradigm, they're jumping out of the pot into the frying pan. Whereas in America, when one of us doesn't want to do what they're supposed to do or they don't like the way things are, it's the same no matter where you go. Cali is ran a little bit more liberal, freedom, but those laws are the same. Those individual laws are the same. You can't do this and you can't do that. We're two nations inside of one is what I'm trying to explain. Whether I did it right or wrong or did it in a comprehensive way, it's not really the point. The point I want you to focus on is the reason why we as black people, black men, are having an issue with our women is because we don't have the last say. Those other countries I was naming and trying to get you to understand, those countries are ran by themselves. So it's always their men that still have the final say. When China does whatever it does and its citizens doesn't like it, Chinese men, either way it goes, they still have the last say. So at the end of the day, even though you may not be following all of the Chinese rules, you're still apt to respect those men, because they're the ones in charge of their country. I'm not saying women don't put in their 2 cents. I'm saying those are the men that are in charge. They have the last say. So it makes a trickle down effect, a domino effect. When the powers that be are men, and this is how the men conduct themselves, those men run a system that is similar in each one's household, individual household. So when each one is similar in each one's household, you'll see an outcome where the women respect the men, because everywhere the women turn, the men are in charge. Their men are in charge. Not men are in charge. Their men are in charge. So when I show you these examples and when I play these videos, I'm not telling you we don't understand. Men do understand what the issue is. It is not a factor of education or articulation or understanding. It's the fact that we are two nations inside of one. We don't have the final say. So ultimately, the women, you're asking the women to move in a manner empathetically and sympathetically that says, this is what's right. So just regardless of how you feel, woman, do it this way because this is what's right. Now, in the other countries, the man can say, I don't care how you feel. Do it because I told you to do it. The women are more inclined to do it because the women already answer to a figurehead that looks like the man that she's speaking to. Whereas when it's our women in Black America, our women do not answer to us. They answer to the system. So it would be anybody who does not look like us. They answer to them. The police are the police are not black. Your politicians are not black. Your governors are not black. Your judicial system is not black. We don't have the final say. So what happens is when you tell the woman what to do that may or may not be in her own best interest or the family's best interest or the future generation's best interest, the women can always say no. It doesn't have to make sense. It doesn't have to 1 + 1 = 2. She doesn't want to. She doesn't have to. And then she can use members of the dominant society to enforce what she does or what she does not want. There's nothing you can do about it. When I try to explain to you guys, you're going to have to separate from them. Now, you can either do it 100% or you can do it in stages or you could do it in percentages. At the end of the day, you have to understand you don't have the final say. And until you get yourself in a position to where your word not necessarily vetoes the law of the land, but you have to get yourself to a position of power to where your women respect your power authority. The Italian women do it. The Ukrainian women that are just hitting America do it. The Jewish women do it. The Asian women do it. The Hispanic women do it. All of them respect their men before they respect the United States government and or law. Black women only respect the United States government and the United States law before they respect black men. That is the problem that we're having. So even though you have to disconnect from the women because they have too much power, that is the key. They have too much power and they're not willing to do the right thing with that level of power. They're only going to do what's in their own best interest, and that is to separate themselves from you. Again, I say this in almost all of my videos so you can hear it. They have figured out, or they have decided to say, massa ain't after me. Massa is after you. And as long as I, black woman, am attached to you, then massa is going to either keep these things from me or make my life a little bit more difficult because I am attached to you. And since me, woman, black woman, do not want a life of hardship, do not want a life of poverty, do not want a life of unhappiness, I, black woman, I'm going to separate myself from you by all means possible. The only thing that they haven't agreed on holistically is whether or not to keep producing our children. Some women said they're going to divest and get with the dominant members of the dominant societies. And then some women say, I'll stay. But understand, all of them are trying to get from the womb to the tomb via a child, which means that child is an automatic economic resource. It has nothing to do with love. It's an economic resource. They turn the children into economic resources. So if you want to offset this, like the video I'm trying to lead you into so you get an understanding of where I'm going with the video, I'm telling you that the men have to do it on their own before they include others. You have to establish the system first amongst men first. And then once you iron out all of the kinks, not a blueprint, once you ironed out all of the kinks and it's functioning respectfully, that's about a 50-year, that's in real life, that's about a 50-year practice. Y'all have to come up with the concept. You have to get with other men and understand it and work it out, hash it out. Then you have to put it into motion. And as you are coming up against any obstacle, you have to come up with solutions for those obstacles. At the same time, you have to come up with solutions to how to refine it, maintain it, sustain it. You have to come up with all those things. You can't come up with it one night and then that's perfect because there's too many obstacles. You come up with it in the next year. You come up another one the next year, another year, a next year, another one the next year. And like most things, it takes about 4 to 10 years for you are able to actually say if it's effective. It's not one thing you can do in 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months, 6 months, 8 years. It takes anywhere between 4 to 10 years to see if it's effective. And if men are running around here having children, you have to understand at any of those stages, it also prolongs whatever you're doing because the children become priority. So if the children become priority, then they're going to sort of kind of derail your plans, or they're going to put them on the back burner, or instead of you being able to pack up and go where you were needed to go, you pretty much can't because you have these children and their innocence is what's key in order for you to get them to understand why you're doing what you're doing. So imagine telling a bunch of men they can't have kids for 50 years. It sounds good in theory. Very few men can pull it off. But on average, most men will be like, I don't know, doc. I want a kid. So then your number becomes lower in order to get with the men who are strong and disciplined not to have kids. There's a lot of variables. This is why I said it takes about 50 years. There's too many variables. And since it takes 50 years and you're already 400, 500 years behind, you're actually trying to climb up a hill that for the most part is impossible. It's not that I only use the word impossible because the way that you guys play with words, you can do it. So-and-so can do it. I got a book where they did it. I'm not going to say it's impossible, but it's hard. And right now, the house is on fire now. So if you wait another 50 years in order to come up with a system, structure, and order a strategy, you're going to be 150 years behind. So you got to think of it in simplest terms that where your average Joe can do it. Your average Joe needs to understand, at least for 10 years, he needs to leave women alone. Because the women have too much power. Because the dominant society has given them too much power. And even if the dominant society decides to take it back, you can take back the power. You cannot take back the condition it has created. You can take back the power. You cannot take back the destruction it has caused. Take back the power. You can take back the power within the eye blink overnight. The women still believe they're better than the men. How are you going to fix that in 5 years? I want you guys to listen to this video so you can get an understanding. The men are the root cause. The men are the cause because the men don't want to do what the men are supposed to do. Our women become not necessarily a root cause, but they're like an auxiliary. Because these men aren't doing this, these women are doing that. If these men do this, then these women will do that. Even if the dominant society has the last say, the women will be more beholding to the men before they are more beholding to the dominant society. Our women are not beholding to us because the dominant society has moved them into positions of power. So now the women are saying, I don't need you. Why do I have to answer to you? So in order for you to get a group of women to answer to you, you don't have to remove the dominant society, but you do have to move in a manner that says, this is what it is. If you want to deal with me. Roll a tape.
But it's about.
We're not talking about.
That was going to be my question to Bruiser
YouTube.
if I was able to finish.
No, yes, we are.
I was going to ask him.
Hold on, you can't say we're not talking about media. Hold on, she said we can't talk. We're not talking about YouTube. Shouts out to my man ABL in the comment section. She said we're not talking about YouTube. What's the largest search engine in the world?
Google.
YouTube, not Google.
So when you say
YouTube.
we're not talking about it, we should be talking about it because regular TV shows have brought their stuff here.
Yep.
Because of how the voice can be used. So that tells you a lot when you listen to somebody saying, oh, we're not talking about that. And we're talking about media. And
so
media.
Does that mean we control the narrative?
Hold on, wait. But that's what we're trying to get at. Here's what I'm trying to get at. When she said, and you know what you said black men are making excuses. And I said, well, I can see how it's being looked at that way because I'm one of the ones that just say, fuck that, quit waiting on somebody else to do something. Do you understand, and this is a fact, you can look it up, one of the reasons why black women beat their children so much? Because they were the ones who said to the master, before I let you kill my son, I will handle it first. You've heard women say, I beat my child before the cops beat my child. Am I lying, Mr. Let Go? So what I'm saying is they're smart. The white people knew you remove that man because that man will tell his kids to fight to the death. Now you got a lot of men raised by women. And if they're raised by those women who told them, I'd rather beat you before I let the cops beat you, I'm trying to save your life by implementing violence against you. That ain't your, shut up, Google. That's not your soldier that you want. So when I'm talking, I'm not saying black men need to make these excuses. What I'm saying is they need to overcome the reasons. If you know the reason something exists, you can go around it, you can go over it, you can go under it, or you can destroy it. But you better know what obstacles in front of you. That's it.
Men have been going out their way to control our own narrative. And I think, and like I said, I think a lot of good has come from it. This space exists because men started being more vocal. This whole space. And I know Mr. Lego talking about the manosphere and everything, but that largely is men voices, male voices. Even Kevin Samuels died and they tried to celebrate his death. We men rallied around him. His channel is still doing numbers to this day. As a matter of fact, he's getting a lot more praise now. You're starting to see more and more women after you got men sharing his videos. You're starting to hear more and more women like, damn, I didn't know he was rocking like that. I didn't know he was saying, because most of the time when he was alive, it was all clips. Now you ain't got no more clips to go off of. All you can do is go and watch the show. So we are controlling our own narrative at this point. It's been a long time coming. But I think the reason why this question exists isn't because we're trying to convince mass media of who black men are. We're trying to convince our own women of who we are. We're trying to convince our own women of who we are. We're trying to convince our own women of who we are. The point of the matter is that when we talk, we're not talking to white folks. We're not talking to the world. We're literally talking to our own women and saying, black men aren't gay. Most black men aren't jobless. Most black men aren't in jail. Most black men ain't this. Because who is saying that narrative? It ain't, they mimic and they speak on the things that women watch. They're advertising to women when they come up with these narratives because they watch them. And then the women, they're not saying anything that our women didn't say first. The mass media didn't say shit that our own women didn't say first. Indeed. They weren't convinced that we wasn't shit. They thought like they told themselves we wasn't shit. They told themselves we wasn't shit. They told themselves we wasn't shit. So now it's us coming up and saying, hey, look, I'm gonna have to tell y'all, men, we ain't all that shit y'all keep talking about us, y'all fucking with the same dudes. That ain't us. Hey, look, the buck stops here. Y'all can keep trying to go out there and talk that shit if you want to, but now we're pushing back. Now, granted,
stop letting women infiltrate men's spaces. Go to a barbershop. Now in there.
I was trying to ask this to Bruiser specifically when he brought it up, because with that and understanding that these are spaces for your particular narrative, wouldn't it be detrimental to invite women to spaces that have complete opposite viewpoints?
I'm gonna tell you the reason why. I'm gonna tell you the reason why. Here's the reason why this space is so successful right now. Is because largely when you saw women on their platforms, they only talk to each other. Unless the dude was gay, they never brought a man up to speak for himself. Now you're starting to see the men are like, hey, look, we're going to invite that's one of the things that Kevin Samuels went big on, was because he always invited his detractors onto the channel to challenge him on the thoughts that he had. So we have no problem having y'all in the space to talk to us, because we need y'all to say the things that y'all say so we can combat it.
The part I was trying to finish, I'll wrap it up. I'm sorry. The part I'm trying to finish to say is it doesn't go like that. Only selective spaces shame the woman for those perspectives. I see a lot more pandering to women for the views, watering it down for that. Oh no, let them talk. If that was the case, and I understand sometimes they're like, lucky y'all can't figure out what perspective I come from, because sometimes I agree. I just look for what sounds the most logical in whatever topic, whether it's male or female. However, in general, if I'm here to understand and get corrected, I'm welcome to it. But at the same time, if you have women who don't want to be corrected because they're going to believe that regardless, then they should be treated as treason. Why are they invited all the time if they are not making no type of way of understanding?
Because I'm going to tell you the reason why. Because it's important to hear something before you. Because if it was just a bunch of men, hold on, let me. If it was just a bunch of men talking shit online, wouldn't nobody listen to us?
Well, in that real, what he just said right there is not 100% true. If you're sounding stupid and nothing productive is coming out of whatever you're talking about, or your information isn't solid, accurate, then no, nobody will listen. But people always listen to men. Men always are being heard. It's just what you're saying. The men here are the men. So we would listen, and then we would adjust. Even if you take an example of a Jason Black or Kevin Samuels, the people were listening to those men. And the women adjusted their behavior because of that man. Remember, he spoke about the bonnet. Women having bonnets. Then all of a sudden you see other women agree. Then you saw Monique get on national TV and say, yeah, women, y'all gonna have to put that bonnet stuff up. People do listen to the men. The difference is how are you carrying yourself? How are you presenting yourself? And what are you trying to get the women to do? What are you after? What you talking about? Even when you look at the sports arena, the sports world, sportscasters, the people are always listening to the men. So when he says if it was a bunch of men talking about sugar, honey, iced tea, nobody would listen. To a certain extent, he's right, because if that's what you're talking about, nobody got time for that. But if you're talking about something that's productive and something that can help the next generation, then nah, he's not talking about the right thing. He's saying whatever he's saying, but it's not right. This is why it's easy. You guys got to be a little bit more discerning. You guys got to be a little bit more aware of the trickery. You guys got to be a little bit more of the fast talking. You guys got to be a little bit more aware of the panderers.
If it was just a bunch of men talking shit online, wouldn't nobody listen to us?
But it's about.
We're not talking about.
That was going to be my question to Bruiser
YouTube.
If I was able to finish.
Yes, we are.
Ask him.
Hold on, you can't say we're not talking about media. Hold on, she said we can't. We're not talking about YouTube. She said we're not talking about YouTube. What's the largest search engine in the world?
Google.
YouTube.
The largest search engine in the world is Google. I need you guys to understand, I'm not a nitpicker. Even though that aspect of what he is talking about is incorrect, I'm not going to sit up here and go down there and say, well, because he's wrong here or he's wrong there. You get 3 strikes before I be like, hey, I get what he's getting at. But on this particular one, he's wrong. Well, this is petty. You're absolutely right. It's petty. But I need you to understand, people aren't right all of the time just because they're right some of the time. Even if you go 10 out of 10, he's probably right 8 out of 10. You got to be 10 out of 10 if you're going to do this thing. If you're going to do this thing that we're doing right here, you got to be 10 out of 10. Because people are looking for you to be perfect. I'm not looking for you to be perfect, but people are looking for you to be perfect. And I just wanted to, like put it back in its original context. I'm not pressured. I don't have to worry about my ego being inflated or whatever. It's just me giving you the information. I'm showing you on the screen. It says meet the top 10 search engines in the world that in 2022. So as of a year ago, it says really there are search engines other than Google. Why? I feel you. That's implying, suggesting, and it later goes on to say that Google is the number one search engine. Google is the number one search engine. Google is the number one search engine. It's no secret that Google rules the online search world, but there are other options available. Then you scroll down, as you can see, number 2 would be, let me find it. Number 2 would be Bing. Search engine number 2 would be Bing at 8.4%. Then you got, I'm going down. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'm just trying to show you so you can get to understand. Baidu, world search engine market is 7.34%. And I'm going to give you another one. Let's see. Search engine number 4 is Yahoo. So YouTube is not the number one. Yandex, what else? Axe, DuckDuckGo, Naver, AOL, Zen-Nem. So if this is the top 10, YouTube is not even on there. So you got to be careful what data they're pulling from, because he could have pulled from a data, but that data source could have been incorrect. My data source can be incorrect. All I'm saying in a nutshell, this is why you got to have 3 references. You got to have 3 references. That way it pulls it a little bit more in perspective. But for the most part, I didn't agree with what he said, because I don't see where YouTube is the search engine. I do see where Google is a search engine. I would have even said Wikipedia. We go on YouTube basically just to be entertained, like a TV. But we don't go on YouTube to how to or what's what. We go on YouTube for how to, but we don't go on there to try to figure out like encyclopedia things or dictionary or definitions or locations. We go on Google for the most part, who, what, when, where, how. Who, what, when, where. But we definitely go on YouTube for how. I just wanted to bring that up.
What's the largest search engine in the world?
Google.
YouTube. Not Google.
So when you say
YouTube.
we're not talking about it, we should be talking about it, because regular TV shows have brought their stuff here.
Yep.
Because of how the voice can be used. So that tells you a lot when you listen to somebody saying, oh, we're not talking about that. And we're talking about media. And
So
media.
does that mean we control the narrative?
Hold on, wait. But that's what we're trying to get at. Here's what I'm trying to get at. When she said, and you know what you said black men are making excuses. And I said, but I don't call it excuses when I'm talking about it right now, because I wasn't saying you got to wait. I call it reasons. See, when you were talking about something, I was just giving you the reason why it doesn't work. Just like FantasyIslandGirl was talking about, well, when it gets to the point where you do all this to men, they should raise up. And Mr. Let It Go said, yeah, Nat Turner they ass. Yeah, but you don't tell them what happened to Nat Turner. They hung that man up, flayed that man in front of everybody and skinned him alive.
But if it
And
was
why did black men let them do that? Why did black men let them do that? Why did black men let them do that? Why did black men let them do that?
Know who's in front of you. It's very important that you learn talking points and behavioral patterns, so that even though when the people don't say, hey, I'm a duck, you can get a better understanding of that might be a duck or that is a duck, regardless of how it behaves, regardless of how it acts, and regardless of what it may do. Code switch. This woman who says that is evil. Not a good woman, not a good person to be around, and she hates black men. You're never going to hear another nationality that says when the Asians were bombed, Japanese were bombed Pearl Harbor 1945, somewhere around there. I'm wrong on the date. I know that I'm wrong on the date. I want to say it was 45, D-Day. I want to say it was 1945. You're never going to hear Japanese women say out loud and in public, why did Japanese men let them do that? You're not going to hear, we got some immigrants in America right now, and they are Hispanic, and another one is, where are they coming from? Russia. Let me skate over that for right now because I'm thinking of that group of people. So I want to come back. I want to give my mind time enough to come back. But you're never hearing the Hispanic women come across that border where sons are dying, daughters are dying, people are getting shot, people are getting killed, people are being deported, and you're not hearing the Hispanic women say, why did the Hispanic men let them do that? You're not hearing those that have family members that were Indians, Native American Indians, say, well, why did Chief Running Bull let them do that? Do you understand what I'm trying to say, Pattern? You can hear Jewish women right now get on TV and defend the fact that their deceased relatives were mistreated by another group of people. You do not hear those group of women saying, well, why did our men let those other men do whatever those other men do to those men? Why did the Jewish men let the German men do that? You don't hear that in the conversation or speech. The problem is what I'm always trying to explain to everyone. The men are the biggest problem because the men don't want to do the work. The men want the women. And as long as the men want the women and are willing to betray other men over the women, then that gives women like a default power. It's like an auxiliary power. Power by default. That's evil. You are in a war. You're at war. So when that dominant group conquers the other group, then it's not a let them, but every time you try to resist, every time you try to fight, every time you try to revolt, every time you try to speak up and show out, they're constantly beating you down because they're more dominant, or they have more tools, or they understand battle, or they've been at it more. So you're not letting them, but you can't stop them. So for a female to say, why did black men let them do that? They were conquered. They were defeated, one, by traitors who went back and told Massa so-and-so and such is up to no good. And so and such plan on doing this. Same thing with Harper's Ferry when it was John Brown. You have people in the black community that are always foiling black communities, black men's, black women's attempts to free their people. So when that black female says, why did black men let them do that? You need to hear that. You don't let that pass. You don't skate over that. You stop trying to prove your point. You stop everything. And the first thing you need to do is you need to investigate. You need to interrogate. Who the fuck are you? Who the fuck are you? Where the fuck did you come from? And how the fuck did you get in here? Because you're not supposed to be saying no shit like that ever. Black men, I'm making this video. I'm trying to explain to you where your problems lie. Your problems lie first with you. You refuse to get on code. You have to get on code. If you do not get on code, your women will never do what is in the best interest of your children. And I have to say your children because your children are the ones that cannot defend themselves. Your female can defend herself. Believe it or not, she can defend herself. She is rendered selfish because of physicality. But if you put a gun in her hand, she will defend herself. If you put a knife or sword in her hand, she will defend herself. It has been proven since time immemorial. If you teach her how to fight, she will defend herself. So if she's able to defend herself, You don't have to die trying to defend her. You're not dying trying to defend her. You're dying trying to defend your children, protect your children. But your woman is the primary conduit of that source. She is rebellious. She's argumentative. She is going against your leadership structure and order. She does not agree to your methodology of what is best. She doesn't. And because she doesn't, the outsiders are able to use her as a weapon, a primary weapon to dismantle, dethrone, and knock you out the box. Knock them out the box, Rick. It is your women. It is not solely other men. Yes, men betray men before pussy. That is a guarantee. But as long as men do not consider women a threat, as long as men do not see women as powerful, then the women fly under the radar and can wreak havoc because the men do not see her full potential.
Why did black men let them do that? Why did black men let them do that? Why did black men let them do that?
They hung that man up, flayed that man in front of everybody and skinned him alive. Y'all can't say, y'all, hey, wait a minute. All y'all talking.
All right, one mic.
I'm so
All of
confused.
y'all talking, and while we're talking about what people should do, every one of us is sitting in what? Central air, central heat, literally not having any fight in you. And most of y'all couldn't fight 20 minutes in a hand-to-hand combat because you've never done it. One of the reasons why black women beat their children so much, because they were the ones who said to the master, before I let you kill my son, I will handle it first. You've heard women say, I beat my child before the cops beat my child. Am I lying, Mr. Let Go? So what I'm saying is they're smart. The white people knew you remove that man because that man will tell his kids to fight to the death. Now you got a lot of men raised by women. And if they're raised by those women who told them, I'd rather beat you before I let the cops beat you, I'm trying to save your life by implementing violence against you. That's not your soldier that you want. So when I'm talking, I'm not saying black men need to make these excuses. What I'm saying is they need to overcome the reasons. If you know the reason something exists, you can go around it, you can go over it, you can go under it, or you can destroy it. But you better know what obstacles in front of you. That's it.
All right, let's get Sweeney in there. Let's get Sweeney in there first, and I'll let you respond, Fantasy Island.
Sure. I think we kind of like touched on this. What was this? A few episodes ago. I think we might have been on Trigger Mike Show. I can't remember. But I talked about this YouTube space for which men have been going out their way to control our own narrative. And I think, and like I said, I think a lot of good has come from it. This space exists because men started being more vocal. This whole space. And I know Mr. Lego talking about the manosphere and everything, but that largely is men voices, male voices. Even Kevin Samuels died, and they tried to celebrate his death. We men rallied around him. His channel is still doing numbers to this day. As a matter of fact, he's getting a lot more praise now. You're starting to see more and more women after you got men sharing his videos. You're starting to hear more and more women like, damn, I didn't know he was rocking like that. I didn't know he was saying, because most of the time when he was alive, it was all clips. Now you ain't got no more clips to go off of. All you can do is go and watch the show. So we are controlling our own narrative at this point. It's been a long time coming, but we here. The only thing we need to do now, because I think here's the problem with the conversation, because we keep talking about mass media, right? But I think the reason why this question exists isn't because we're trying to convince mass media of who black men are. We're trying to convince our own women of who we are.
Ooh.
We have
But
to go.
why?
Cook, Sweeney.
The point of the matter is that when we talk, we're not talking to white folks. We're not talking to the world. We're literally talking to our own women and saying, black men aren't gay. Most black men aren't jobless. Most black men aren't in jail. Most black men ain't this. Because who is saying that narrative? It ain't, I mean, they mimic and they speak on the things that women watch. They're advertising to women when they come up with these narratives because they watch them. And then the women, they're not saying anything that our women didn't say first. The mass media didn't say shit that our own women didn't say first.
Indeed.
They weren't convinced that we wasn't shit. They thought like they told themselves we wasn't shit. So now it's us coming up and saying, hey, look, now granted.
Stop letting women infiltrate men's spaces. Stop letting women infiltrate men's spaces. Stop letting women infiltrate men's spaces.
The women always will have access to men's spaces because men will always give them access to men's spaces. The women are basically agents, sleeper agents. They know change is coming. They're not ready for the change, but they know it's coming. They don't want to lose their power. Black women have power. They have power that was not supposed to be given to them. When our ancestors came off of the plantation and they got the right to vote, white men said, give black men the right to vote. When white women heard that black men were going to get the right to vote over white women then retaliated against the white man and told the white man or white men, don't give him that Negro power over me. Then those white men turned around and said, you know what, that makes sense. It does and it doesn't. It does because you want it all to yourself. It doesn't because you have to understand the pathology of power. If you understand what power is supposed to go from one source to another, to one conduit to another, from one terminal to another, from one socket to another. When the dominant society did what they did and they adverted or upverted the power pathology from one power source to another and gave it to the women, auxiliary power, alternative power, or alternate power, it changed the dynamic of the landscape. So now the women were given power again via the men. The reason why the dominant society is suffering themselves as well is because they gave the power to a source that should not have had the power. Now back then it made sense because you wanted to keep it all to yourself. 200 years later, the chickens are coming home to roost. Now the men are saying that the women have too much power and there's nothing they can do about it. There's nothing they can do about it because it's in law. And everything you're trying to do is keep the other group of men from having power or equal power. So now you have to keep the power in the woman's hands, but as long as the power stays in the woman's hands, then she has power over you. That's the catch-22. You either take the power out of the woman's hands and give it back to another man, like you do the Hispanic community, like you do the Asian community, like you do all other communities, or you keep the power in the woman's hands, and by default, your women, their women, will use our women as proxies to undermine, annihilate, and destroy their men. And when their men are out of power, then the world is going to be conquered by other men. Even if it's not conquered by black men, it will be conquered by Asian men. It will be conquered by Hispanic men. Asians are next on the horizon, again, to be in power. That is because women will always infiltrate places because the men are the problem. No means no, and keep them out. However, we're two nations inside of one. Since we're two nations inside of one, and that dominant society doesn't want to share his power or its power, he gives it to other people. Nobody else is going to be a threat to his power but black Americans. He knows that. So give it to anybody but black Americans. The women will always infiltrate men's spaces because men allow them.
We're trying to convince our own women of who we are.
Ooh.
We have
But
to go.
why?
Cook, Sweeney, cook.
The point of the matter is that when we talk, we're not talking to white folks. We're not talking to the world. We're literally talking to our own women and saying black men aren't gay. Most black men aren't jobless. Most black men aren't in jail. Most black men ain't this. Because who is saying that narrative? It ain't, I mean, they mimic and they speak on the things that women watch. They're advertising to women when they come up with these narratives because they watch them. And then the women, they're not saying anything that our women didn't say first. The mass media didn't say shit that our own women didn't say first. Indeed. They weren't convinced that we wasn't shit. They thought like they told themselves we wasn't shit. So now it's us coming up and saying, "Hey, look, I'm gonna have to tell y'all, men, we ain't all that shit y'all keep talking about us. Y'all fucking with the same dudes. That ain't us. I'm the average guy. Don't talk about me like that because that ain't me." That's what we're doing right now. Is we're telling our own women, "Hey, look, the buck stops here. Y'all can keep trying to go out there and talk that shit if you want to, but now we're pushing back." Now, granted,
you stop letting women infiltrate men's spaces. Go to a barbershop.
I was trying to ask this to Brewster specifically when he brought it up, because with that and understanding that these are spaces for your particular narrative, wouldn't it be detrimental to invite women to spaces that have complete opposite viewpoints?
I'm gonna tell you the reason why. I'm gonna tell you the reason why. Here's the reason why this space is so successful right now. Is because largely when you saw women on their platforms, they only talk to each other. Unless the dude was gay, they never brought a man up to speak for himself. Now you're starting to see the men are like, "Hey, look, we're gonna invite that's one of the things that Kevin Samuels went big on, was because he always invited his detractors onto the channel to challenge him on the thoughts that he had. So we have no problem having y'all in the space to talk to us, because we need y'all to say the things that y'all say so we can combat it."
The part I was trying to finish, I'll wrap it up. I'm sorry. The part I'm trying to finish to say is, it doesn't go like that. Only selective spaces shame the woman for those perspectives. I see a lot more pandering to women for the views. I see a lot more pandering to women for the views. I see a lot more pandering to women for the views, watering it down for that. Oh no, let them talk. If that was the case, and I understand sometimes they're like, "Lucky y'all can't figure out what perspective I come from," because sometimes I agree. I just look for what sounds the most logical in whatever topic, whether it's male or female. However, in general, if I'm here to understand and get corrected, I'm welcome to it. But at the same time, if you have women who don't want to be corrected because they're going to believe that regardless, then they should be treated as treason. Why are they invited all the time if they are not making no type of way of understanding?
Because I'm gonna tell you,
then they should be treated as treason. Why are they invited all the time if they are not making no type of way of understanding?
Because I'm gonna tell you,
then they should be treated as treason. Why are they invited all the time if they are not making no type of way of understanding?
Because
even the women are telling the men, if the women aren't getting on board with the program, why are you here? The reason why the men keep accepting the women in or refuse to accept the logic is because the men want to appease the women, appeal to the women, empathize with the women, sympathize with the women. And hopefully, if the logic, if the data, if the statistics, if the information combats the woman's feeling, then hopefully the woman will move based on the logic. She's not. She's going to move based on how she feels. So if you don't stroke her ego, she's going to go to another guy that's going to stroke her ego. It's important that the listening audience, you need to understand, the problem is the men. They betray each other over vagina. You have no power. Out of all of the groups in America, black men are the only group that betray each other to this extent. No other group betrays each other. The men don't betray each other over vagina. Black men are the only group that betray each other over vagina. And the women know this, so the women take advantage of this. If you want to fix our community for the next future generations, the men have to stop betraying each other. If you're not able to do that, you will fail the next generation. The women are telling you, get us out, y'all build alone. And the men are saying, but we need you. Versus saying, I appreciate you for saying that. And then mount up, Roll out.
I just literally gave y'all a solution, and y'all just want to fucking argue like y'all always do. So it goes back to what Tommy said. When men are up here striving to change the narrative, here y'all goofy ass turn around. But what about me? But what about this? Fuck that.
And it's gonna
if we change the narrative will change. We have control over YouTube. Black men do. So fuck all the other shit.
And that's
Who
what
cares?
You should be pushing for them to change it.
This woman is
They're not.
Infiltrator right here. This woman is
They're not.
Infiltrator right here. This woman is
They're not.
Infiltrator right here.
Remember what I said about behavior patterns and talking points. You don't need to know everything about everyone. All you need to know is understand what is the mission statement, what is the objective, what is the goal. The goal is to fix our community, to save the next generation. How you do that is man marries woman, and you go throughout the remainder of your life staying married in the same house to that woman or that man. So when the outsiders or future generations look, they can say you as a pillar or an example, and you keep it going. Even if she's unhappy, even if he is unhappy, you keep the union going and you keep your mouth quiet about the good and the bad of that union. Because when people are looking at you, they're looking at you as an example. If you can do it, if my dad can do it, then I can do it. Well, if my mom could do it, I can do it. That is the goal. But you have to understand when people don't want to do it. So when one lady says one thing as far as keeping the women out, the men should listen and keep the women out. Then you're going to have another lady that says something and she's contradictive or contrary or cantankerous, or she's something, but she's not agreeable. And if they don't agree, that means they're not going to agree. So even if the plan is fully completed, hashed out, she's going to disagree. And then she's going to look to the dominant society to say, make him stop, make him change. Then the dominant society is going to come in and is going to fight on her behalf. Learn the behavior patterns, learn the talking point.
This is the infiltrator right here. This is the problem.
Listen to me. There's no reason for you to act like I'm an infiltrator because I disagree with you on one point and I'm adamant about it. There is no reason for you to act like I can't come into this space, give my opinion without it seeming like all of a sudden I'm an infiltrator. That doesn't make any sense because I've been calm and patient this whole time.
So I just wanted to finish what I was going to say really quick. I believe that Black men should take control of their own narrative by eliminating the ladies out, because it's going to be too much arguing. Have you guys literally come together and figure out a plan like you do with a business. You got the CEOs, managers, and everybody come later. You got to come with the business plan first. Black men, do that, and then appropriately get the ladies that you want in, and then create the channels.
You guys have to understand why something so simple is made so complicated. Something so simple is going to be made so complicated because the people that you are in discussion with, the people that you are in conversation with, they're the ones that's going to make it complicated. Understand what I'm saying? It's the same thing as being family members. It's the same thing as being close relatives as friends or in a team. The coach gives you orders, gives you the play, you run the play. If everybody's doing what they're supposed to do, then you get a victory. Whoever's not doing what they're supposed to do, then the coach or the other teammates are going to reprimand, and we don't mean physical. We just basically mean speak words of correction. So on the next play, on the next time around, the individuals who are participating in that play can do a better job because they fumbled the ball or they got an interception or they weren't where they were supposed to be at a specific time in order to execute the play to its positive full extent. We are having issues because there are members of our community, even though they may be sitting at the table, we have members of our community that do not want what we all want. It goes for men and women. And the best way to address these issues, and I'm being honest with you, the best way to address these issues is you got to smoke them out and then kick them out. There are certain men that are at that table. They don't need to be at that table. There are certain women don't need to be at the table. Some women can probably be at the table because it's called an exception to the rule. Other than that, your average woman cannot be at the table because she's going to be too disagreeable. She's not going to really care for whatever it is you're saying, whatever it is you're talking about. So you have to basically understand why we are having problems. We're having problems in our community because everybody doesn't want it. And until you figure out a group of men and a group of women that want it, y'all need to separate from the society, main society, majority society, and get your own little thing popping. And then as you get your own little thing popping, your sons and daughters get access to that network. As they become older, they get access to that network. As they become older, they marry each individual that are the forefathers of the foundation builders of that network. And so if I bring in, if it's two men, I have a girl and he has a boy, we should marry our daughters, our children, your son, my daughter should get married. We keep the family, we keep the money tight, and we keep the communication tight. And the chances of them being divorced or the chances of them going awry is less likely because we're the ones that raised them. We're the ones that made them understand this is the reason why we did what we did. And when those individuals have children, offspring, or descendants, they're going to do the same thing, and you're going to try to keep it all in the family because everybody doesn't want the same thing. And since everybody doesn't want the same thing, you pretty much separate yourself from everybody, and it'd be like minds, birds of a feather stick together. Until we do this as a collective or as a whole, we're going to be running in circles. The women generally don't want it, and that is the problem that we're having. You can do and you can speak any kind of language you want to get the women. We already know the women are going to be got. Somebody's going to pick them up. Somebody's going to take them off the vine. The problem is what can you do to get her to stay? If you can't get the women to stay, then you don't have a family. If you don't have a family, then you don't have a community. If you don't have a community, then you don't have any political power to fight because all of it's connected. And the reason why we don't have a political power to fight is because we don't have families. We don't have families. We have economics, but we don't have families. And our economics is being funded for our individual selfish needs. I need money. Well, I don't need you if I have the money. Well, I need money. Well, I don't need you if I have the money. So I don't need you because I have the money. So as long as I have the money, I don't need you. But in order to really do it the right way, I need you. So I'm willing to take a back seat or take lesser of because I don't want you. So I'd rather have the money. Men are saying the same thing and women are saying the same thing, and nobody wants to be with anybody because they would prefer to have the money. The reason why they would prefer to have the money is because when you're in a relationship with any human being, there are do's and don'ts. When you're in a relationship with anybody, you're going to have to sacrifice a lot of who you are or a lot of what you wanted in order to get what you really do want. You don't want to be alone, and you do want someone to love you, and you really want to spend the rest of your life with someone you can trust, someone you love, some of this, some of that, you have all that. Well, you can't be 100% me in a relationship to get the things that you want. And relationships hurt. Even if you're in the midst of it, relationships hurt. But it doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It means it's life. But when people give you bad advice and the women don't want to adhere to the rules, then what they do is they me. Then the men end up paying the ultimate price. The children pay the ultimate price. Men are second. And the women still don't care. If you want to fix it for the next generation, you're going to have to kick the women out. Warrior class, Zoo, rise up. Warrior class, Zoo, show up. Warrior class, Zoo, speak up. Warrior class, Zoo, smoke them out. Black peace, blessings, and black love.
We are coming to get our check.
Death was better than bondage.
Fair Use Act disclaimer. This site is for educational purposes only. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education, and research.